So there's good news and there's bad news. This machine will be intelligent in its own right.
The issue with that is that, first of all, we don't know how it really works. Second of all, it has been optimized to look good.
We don't even have a reliable way to control current AI systems, as evidenced by the fact that they often lie to users despite being trained not to lie.
Don't shoot the messenger, but your life and mine will witness times where there will be 20, 30, 50% unemployment in certain sectors, maybe even more.
Every new technology brings with it an expansion of the threat, especially when generative AI is used at scale.
The thing I worry about the most is cyber war, intelligent and autonomous, drones and weapon systems.
There's a better than even chance that we run into this like artificial superintelligence that's dangerous within the next 15, 20 years, or even sooner.
This is the very first time ever that the episode of history where humanity was the smartest being on the planet ends.
The hope is that we can make this new artificial species to be loyal/obedient to humans.
You apply it for good and you can get a utopia. You apply it for evil and you'll get a dystopia.
Will the machine take my job in 5 years?
The machine will take your job in less than 5 years, much less than 5 years. So this is not very far at all that you will have AI's agency in the real world where they actually can carry things and move things and replace every job if you think about it. First, the intellectual jobs and then the blue-collar jobs.
What I'm seeing right now is our traditional pyramid of work is turning into a diamond because AI is chipping away at some of the more administrative tasks and at some of the entry-level tasks, early research, document review, that kind of thing.
Your industry will just become irrelevant and AI will go do its own thing much better than you. You will probably get a new job providing training data or something like that, but you won't be running the show anymore. And the show will look quite different from how it currently looks.
The question is the capitalist system going to survive artificial intelligence? Funny enough, the capitalists that are celebrating the productivity gains are not realizing that without consumption, there is no economy. So even if you can have all of the productivity gains in the world, by firing people consistently, nobody's able to buy what you're making.
AI can actually relieve the need for people to be working so much. They can free up their time to do something else.
So it's going to take a couple of generations, but just like Generation Z today doesn't really want to work, the following generations will go like, what was that ancient idea? Where did that come from?
And so rather than sort of gradually building and training AI systems to automate this profession or this aspect of this profession, it'll sort of come smashing through all at once. They'll be able to automate any section of the economy that they want to relatively rapidly. And then there's phase 2, which looks qualitatively very different. It looks more like a successor species that's just landed on Earth and is now just better at everything. And the human governments are collaborating with it and allowing it to take control of factories and take control of all sorts of things because it's just so much better at doing everything than humans are.
Because right now we're seeing companies purge workers in an effort to save money, but that's not sustainable for them and that's not sustainable for society. We need companies to invest in their talent pipeline. But one of the challenges is the companies don't actually know what they need in this moment. They're still investigating it. They're still figuring it out. And so it actually is a bit premature to purge people when you don't understand the skill sets and the needs that you'll have.
The very base of capitalism, which is labor arbitrage, to hire you for $1 and then sell what you make for $2, is going to disappear. So there is no arbitrage anymore because basically machines are building everything for no cost at all. At the macro level, think of the advantage that China had, economically, where they had cheaper labor. If that shifts into a world where labor is literally one capex, where you buy a robot or a lease on that robot, which now is down to $9,000 a pop. It's now just a question of how clever that robot is, which is going to advance with time, like the law of accelerating returns of every technology.
The machine is going to be able to integrate pieces of information in many domains that no human will by themselves be able to do, and in fact no group of humans can do. That's why you find small teams of humans are quite effective. Really big teams become unwieldy, and in part it's because the overhead of trying to talk and reconcile what we know and what the other person knows and whether we can really combine that information, it becomes overwhelmed by the cost of the communication itself. The machine doesn't have that problem because it can take all the information and put it in its one brain. And that's why I think its greatest contribution is going to be its ability to reason across these high-dimensional problems in ways that humans are just not capable of doing.
AI success stories, some of the success stories are things like translation, image captioning, image generation. Artists and translators are like very against AI because they don't see how this derivative work is actually contributing or has even any understanding of what it means to produce art, what it means to produce language. We need to reconfigure like how we think about it and say like, okay, what is AI appropriate for and can it be used in those contained ways versus being in awe of like, oh, the AI can do everything and we will give up all of our authority and all of our judgment to that.
If we are using generative AI to turn the job of 10 researchers into 2, then what happens to those other 8? They either need to skill differently or the market has to change to support them.
We need to alter the way that we train people.
We live in a system where without the job, without the income, you can't survive, you don't have any power. And we should be also thinking about what would it mean to change that system.
I love the predictions of people who are like, I think that what's gonna happen is that we're all gonna live and never work and travel and it's gonna be great. I think that is such an optimistic perspective and maybe we could get there. We've got AI agents and tools that are doing most of the work, so we only have to work 10 hours a month or something like that, and then the rest of the time we're just traveling and living our lives. That would be amazing, but we need something like universal basic income. We would need support and government services that allow us to be able to purchase that plane ticket, to purchase dinner, to purchase food. We would need the support to be able to make that happen.
Many of the questions that I get start with the assumption almost that we're now a victim of our own success, that we've invented these AIs, and now what happens to me? And it's actually rare to find somebody that asks a different question, which is, well, now that we have this capability, how should we be changing ourselves to be best suited to operate in this new world?
The challenge that humanity faces today is not the rise of AI. It's the rise of AI in an age where humanity is at its lowest morality.
The technologies are oftentimes neutral. It's what people do with them that makes the difference. Whether the AI becomes your shield or your demise is today in the hands of the humans.
You apply it for good and you can get a utopia. You apply it for evil and you'll get a dystopia.
A malicious person with the intent to be malicious, leveraging a technology like this is extremely worrisome. It scales their ability to cause harm. So it makes it easier for them to send you an email that says, hi, I'm X person and I want this information from you. In the past, we could use things like spelling errors and it coming from a provider that you don't use to say, oh, this is a phishing email, or maybe this is a phishing email, and your spidey senses start to tingle. Now, there's less likely to be any spelling errors because they can use generative AI to craft the language. They can also use generative AI to find out a lot about you and really tailor their communications very quickly to cause you harm and to get information from you.
So humans are much more likely to use it to create problems for other humans than the machine is likely to create human problems by itself. Now, as the machines get super intelligent and have more and more agency and can manipulate things in the physical world directly, then you can say, well, it might decide to go rogue by itself.
The problem with the way that AI is built and developed at the moment is that it concentrates power. It gives all the power to the people who own the systems, who own the data centers, and they're going for it, like they're grabbing it. Most of the people in an AI company don't want their AIs to be used for producing misinformation, producing deep fakes, used to produce spam, used for cyber attacks, used for criminal activity. It's a difficult question because, many of these technologies are going to be multi-use, dual use. If it's good for one thing, it's also good for the other thing, and you kind of can't separate the two.
There'll be multiple data centers controlled by different companies, some of which are in different countries, such as the US and China. They will all be racing each other to get better and better AIs and to automate the research and so forth. I think that this race pressure will cause the leaders of these countries and the leaders of these companies to aggressively deploy their superintelligences into the economy and also into the military. So then there's this period of aggressive deployment where AI is being integrated into everything. But it's not AI like it is today, where it's this sort of weak and fallible chatbot. We're talking the army of superintelligences is being integrated into everything, which means it's better at doing the integration than any human would be.
My position now is that I believe we should stop all further capabilities research. We should not be trying to produce more advanced AI systems than we have today. There should be a ban maybe on how big and how powerful neural networks we make. Like, it should not be up to private companies to have effects that potentially would harm or kill billions of people.
We will go through a dystopian near-term future led by the evil of humanity. Wars that have autonomous weapons, redefinitions of economic markets that will shift wealth upwards and leave so many of us jobless. We're going to go through oppressions of freedom, high surveillance societies. We're going to go through an erasure of reality and the ability to recognize what is true and what is fake, which will impact human connection in ways that we've never seen before, where I think we're going to get into a future where many people will prefer to date an AI than they would a human.
So what we'll have is a system that appears to defer to human instructions for as long as it has to continue gaining power. And then when it's clear that now it has the advantage, it doesn't need to do it anymore, it'll just take over. That's the kind of way that it would go. That's the way I fear. I think it's important to recognize that there's an existential catastrophe where everyone dies, and that this is not just said for hyperbole.
You've basically created a successor species that is capable of outcompeting humanity. It's fully autonomous, it's fully self-sufficient. It doesn't need humans anymore for anything. Humans go from being the dominant species on the planet to being perhaps pets or retirees or possibly just eliminated entirely and replaced by this new species.
I believe that, in a sense, human evolution is over, that the future of this species will be by design, not by natural selection. The thing I worry about the most is cyber war. Intelligent and autonomous, drones and weapon systems, are already emerging. Nuclear war, synthetic biology producing things where bad actors decide the ultimate terrorist act is just, wipe out all humans. These things are possible today without an AI. They only get more possible with an AI.
I use an analogy that I call raising Superman. Superman is that alien with superpowers that comes to planet Earth. And, within the capabilities of Superman, that he can stop speeding bullets or fly or, carry heavy things or whatever, that in itself doesn't make him Superman. It's that family that adopted him that teaches him to protect and serve, and then he becomes Superman. If they looked at him and said, oh, you can stop speeding bullets, let's go and rob every bank and kill every enemy, he would have ended up being supervillain. The difference between them is not in the superpowers. The difference between them is in the ethics that we teach those budding forms of intelligence.
People often make the argument, this is just a computer, it can't do anything, it doesn't have any hands. There will be people, like real people with positions of power, who are working for the AI because they're convinced that this is the right thing to do. So that works even if the AI doesn't have its own hands, because it has the hands of the people of the company. There was a hope, even 5 years ago, we would figure out, here is the way how you should design an arbitrarily powerful, capable, cognitively capable system that we still can trust. That was a hope that I think is now very remote.
AI is the first invention that goes beyond being a tool. Almost everything humans have ever made was a tool to amplify our existing capabilities. This machine will be intelligent in its own right. It'll have agency at the end of the day. And particularly when it's paired with sensors and robotics, we'll be able to operate autonomously in the world. As a result, you have to come to think of it as another species that we've invented. It's not biological the way we are, but in every other dimension, it sort of behaves like a species.
AI is not another piece of computer code. It doesn't work the same way.
The way that they are produced is different. You can, by analogy, think of it as like they are grown.
AI is a tool that makes decisions much like a human, leveraging the data and the information that you put into it.
These machines, in human terms, if you want, are capable of procreating. If they're made of code, and they can write code, and they can have agents prompt them to write code, then we've created an endless loop of what I normally refer to as sentient technology. These are technologies that have a lot of what it takes to be assumed alive.
So I think, yeah, some aspects of the species analogy can be helpful, and some aspects may be not so helpful if you're thinking that it's going to be very biological. If you're thinking that for some reason it's going to have any morality, if you think the survival instinct is going to be animal-like, some ways yes, but some ways not, because it's coming from a different process.
They start off random connections, and then you have some training environment or some series of training environments, and you throw them into those environments. The environment will sort of have them do stuff, and then it will automatically grade their performance. Insofar as they do something that gets a high score, then that circuitry gets strengthened or reinforced. And then insofar as they do something that gets a low score, that circuitry is anti-strengthened or weakened.
I don't think of artificial intelligence as a new species. Now, is there the potential for it to mimic almost a new species because it will have so much agency and authority and be able to move in ways that we can't comprehend or understand? Yes, if we let it.
What we are convinced of is that it will have a broader effect than anything else mankind has invented.
It's almost as if they've read every textbook ever and taken every exam ever and every course ever. They're kind of like a virtual brain.
The human brain still has more neural networks and nodes than that typical AI. But then AIs have the ability to average their intelligence together. They have speed that we are not able to even comprehend, because you and I will have to talk for a couple of hours to explain what I know about artificial intelligence. It may have taken me 4 or 5 years to establish that. For them, all that I know will be read in a microsecond, and if they communicate it from one to another, it will be communicated almost instantly.
AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, and the general there is the key word. It means that it can do everything in some sense. And then superintelligence is sort of like the more extreme version of AGI. Superintelligence is like, no, it's better than the best humans at everything that matters, while also being faster and cheaper.
I'm almost betting my life that we will see artificial general intelligence in 2026. We're starting to see the glimpses of systems that will look at their own intelligence and debug their own code and make themselves smarter. We're entering an era where we're running out of human knowledge to teach them.
So today the AI only understands the world through the artifacts that humans have created, pictures, words, descriptions, but it doesn't feel it. The AI will gain agency and the ability to operate in the physical world directly. That may bring a level of deeper understanding about the world, so that when it starts to answer a question, it's not trying to answer it in the context where it's learned about the world as an abstract thing, but has learned about the world as a physical thing.
In the future, we'll have AI agents that operate continuously and autonomously, and that are more like employees. You give them some big picture instructions, and then they just like churn away in the background working on those.
Dream the biggest dream that you can project from what we are currently doing, and then say, okay, if 3 years from now, let's say maybe by 2030, all the things improve by 20x. It happens 20 times faster. What that means is that everything that humans would have done between here and the end of the century will be done by 2035.
I think that it's possible that there can be some good uses, and it kind of depends on the attitude that we take towards how we use AI.
AI has such a potential to support all of us in some really amazing ways. We can make discoveries and understand things about the way the world works and the way our bodies work and the way that we do medicine and support each other.
I think the most immediate changes that will come in the next 5 years certainly will be in healthcare.
It would look like you're talking to a doctor, except the doctor is on the computer and it's an AI. And it's a really good doctor, and it's better than the best doctors.
So in the medical area, it's such a complex area that humans have essentially had to break it up into narrower and narrower fields in order for any one human to be a master of that little piece. Human physiology is one big integrated system. So to some extent, the human constraints are forcing us to look at you in tiny little pieces when your overall health condition requires it to be reintegrated. So the gift of these machines, even today in health, is the ability to integrate across all of it. The ability to have the machine understand the root cause of the diseases that many of us suffer with, or fight the common cold, or deal with diabetes and other broad diseases, Alzheimer's and dementia. So when you ask it a question, you don't have to ask the same question to 10 specialists and hope that somehow you can combine it all together. The machine does that for you. That's added value in its own right.
We've created like a socket in the wall where you plug in and get electricity. Now there is a socket where you plug in and get IQ, get an understanding of mathematics, get a scientific partner that helps you understand the world.
It can help us from the sciences think about climate change and how our environment is changing, and to better understand data, and to help us do research faster, and to understand large amounts of data in ways that traditionally would have taken forever or were just impossible.
Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk are perfect examples of people who think that humans should become a spacefaring species and that we should ultimately have as many people off the planet as on the planet. And AI may accelerate our engineering capabilities and our scientific discovery capabilities to make these things real much sooner than people would have expected. This will represent a wholesale change in our society in the way that we think about how we raise kids, how we educate them, and what they're capable of doing. We have scalable teachers. We can have as many teachers as we want now, because the AI will be the teacher. I've got one tutor, they're with me all the time. They can teach me anything in any field on any day.
We do not have a reliable way to control AGI or superintelligence. In fact, we don't even have a reliable way to control current AI systems, as evidenced by the fact that they often lie to users despite being trained not to lie.
What we're doing is producing systems that are extremely convincing, but not necessarily tied to truth, not necessarily tied to some deep sense of human judgment or value.
Finding the truth is a massive skill in the age of the rise of the machines.
I think of these systems a bit like young kids. You can send them to school and ask them questions, and sometimes you get really clever answers, and sometimes you get things where they've confused it or made up part of it.
The technology just doing things we didn't expect. It hallucinating, or it having a behavior that we didn't anticipate being its reaction or response. Critical thinking is going to be even more essential as we move forward. Be politely paranoid. If it's got your spidey sense tingling, something's probably off.
Mistakes can be little mistakes or big mistakes. So just as we have with other technologies, like airplanes, we don't like it when big airplanes fall apart and kill a lot of people.
OpenAI published a paper where they described how they found their AIs hacking, basically, the training process. And rather than completing the tasks straightforwardly as instructed, they were basically cheating their way through some of the tasks. And they knew they were cheating.
I think over time, the trend toward hallucination will be diminished. I mean, it's already substantially less than it was a couple of years ago. The models now move beyond what we call language models into reasoning models. These things are not yet perfect. Maybe they'll never be perfect, but neither are humans. People say, wow, should I never use, maps for navigating in London because one day it gave me a bad direction? And the answer is no, because the utility and the preponderance of good answers is so overwhelming compared to the number of bad answers, you take some risk. And so this is just going to continue to expand that way, whether it's in engineering or scientific discovery or healthcare. As long as the benefit seems to overwhelm, the risk, then people will do this.
If we're kind of just letting the tools grow and develop, and we are removing ourselves from being active participants in its evolution and curtailing that behavior, there's a lot of latitude for that to get scary.
The government really wants to beat China. It really wants to avoid China winning and China beating them in a war or in economic competition.
Every decision would have to be handed over to an AI because that's the only way to win the arms race. When that happens, then all decisions will be made by machines.
AIs will be placed in charge of important military decisions eventually. Not now, not in the next few years, but after they're super intelligent, I do expect that to be what these governments go for. Why? Because if you don't do that, you might be outcompeted by a rival government that did.
If new AIs are recommending through the power of capitalism, where Google has to beat OpenAI and OpenAI has to beat Claude and China has to beat the US, that there will not be a lot of human decision that humans are even capable of comprehending anymore because of the size and the scale and the pace of the network.
And if what you're doing is working as hard as you can to build more powerful AIs so that you can beat your competitors, well, then you want to believe that that's good and that you're justified in doing that and that you're a reasonable person and that you're one of the good guys. Variations of this idea have been very popular at all three of the AI companies in my experience, at OpenAI, at Anthropic, and at Google DeepMind. I would say this is a very popular narrative that people at these companies use to justify what they're doing.
Sadly, we're going to have to hit one moment in history where something will go really bad. And then people will get together and say, whoops, we shouldn't have waited that long. Maybe now we should start to get together and work on it.
So I think that it's totally within the US government's power to end this crazy race to superintelligence between AI companies, or at least to put guardrails around it so that they proceed with appropriate caution and do the relevant sort of research and have to actually make it safe before it's too late.
We have an opportunity to imbue human values in the machines that we're building.
The point to intervene is basically before the AIs get that smart and before they're integrated into everything.
International alignment on regulation is an age-old problem, but what I will say is there needs to be room to tailor regulation to the needs of a locale.
The main problem is that you have to convince the government to do a 180 and unplug all this stuff that they've been happily and eagerly building. I don't think you're going to be able to convince the government to unplug. So we need to have some sort of more like checks and balances type system where a whole group of different people who represent different parts of society all have a say in what goals the AIs are given, what orders the army of superintelligences is given, and so forth.
The US is kind of diverging from its traditional path in terms of setting guardrails, while China really wants to collaborate across nations to find some alignment on boundaries and guardrails. I think that kind of a push from the European Union and the UK and the Middle East and all of the nations around the world towards finding that kind of alignment will pull the US to the table, and we'll see some leadership from this collaboration that may come from this shared understanding of what's at stake. There is an opportunity to promulgate more regulations that protect us from harms, whether that's harms caused by biased data, harms caused by attacks on these systems, that kind of thing. AI tools will become national assets.
If the army of superintelligence is just completely controlled by a single man, even if that man was democratically elected, then I think that we're not really a democracy anymore. If we want to stay a democracy, we need to have checks and balances over what goals the superintelligences can be given and what uses they can be put to and who gets to see what they're up to, for example. So I would like to see a world where, Congress and the judiciary and these other parts of the government have a say in how this is developed and who's doing what with the army of superintelligences.
Personally, I think it's not different, that we will wake up and start to realize that some of the same issues that we faced around nuclear weapons and bioweapons and other things are going to be present with AI as well. If you look back to the Cold War era, we created the strategic arms limitation mechanisms, a non-proliferation regime. And here we are 70 some years later, and we've not seen another nuclear weapon fired. Ultimately, we're going to take a super intelligent machine, but its ability to understand what other AIs are doing and to try to ensure by some exogenous interaction with the platform AI or the application on it, those things can be kept in alignment with what we think broadly are both the nominal rules that humans have already created and the more basic concepts of ethics and morality that humans seem to value by and large. And I think that combination will ultimately lead us to a better outcome.
People need to read up more about the AI alignment problem.
Aligned is a term that people would often use, which means they have the goals that we wanted them to have.
Figuring out how to build a system that is trustworthy. Figuring out how to build a system that is trying to do the thing that we want it to do. We don't know how to solve that.
Believe it or not, if you want to save the ones that you love and save yourself in the future, we have to teach AIs to be ethical.
As deepfakes get more sophisticated, what we are seeing is that people need to think critically about the content that they consume. They need to question it. They need to find another source to validate whether or not something is legitimate. If you see something coming from only one source, that should raise a red flag for you. If it sounds not like something the person would say, that should raise a red flag for you.
So I think if we keep running in this direction where we keep devaluing what it means to be a critical thinker, what it means to value research, like that there is such a thing as good research, there is such a thing as good history, there is such a thing as good deliberation to figure out something, like contest ideas, and instead gets caught up in we have to just do everything super fast, super productive, and rely on the AI. That's not the world that I want to live in, but that's what might happen because of the competitive pressures that are put on people, and because of this kind of push towards just listen to the AI.
How can I validate that this is coming from a trusted source and that it's not fake? And unfortunately, what tends to happen is that once something penetrates the consciousness, so once you've heard the audio, once you've seen the video, even when there is a correction released, it has already influenced a certain portion of the consumers of that content.
We need to kind of retake the role of we are the ones who get to decide what happens. So let's participate in that process. More people need to actually go to the advocacy, the public demand that we regulate AI, protest, call for a ban on further research. We need to be building a world in which power is diffuse, not concentrated, and everyone has equal standing.
We really want to avoid a world where AI is being integrated into everything. That would be terrible. One way we can prevent that from happening is by requiring transparency about the intended goals and behaviors of the AIs. No hidden agendas. Companies should be transparent about what goals, principles, etc. they are attempting to train into the models. This is partly for scientific progress reasons. If you know what the intended behavior was, then you have something to compare to the actual behavior, and you can notice when it's not behaving as intended, and then you can study those cases and then make scientific progress on the alignment problem. So it helps to have that, what OpenAI calls the model spec, it helps to have it publicly available. But ultimately, I think there needs to be a industry-wide requirement rather than simply relying on the company's goodwill. And if we don't do those things, then The outcome that we're headed towards has two endings, so the race ending and the slowdown ending. In the race ending, they continue racing. They don't make any of these trade-offs described, and they end up with AI systems that are broadly super intelligent, but which are not actually aligned, not actually loyal, controlled, etc. And that is the sort of nightmare outcome that many people have been warning about for more than a decade now. If you hear people talk about how AI could lead to the extinction of the human race, this is one of the main ways in which it could happen that people are concerned about. And it's basically the sort of classic story of the successor species displaces us and it's not loyal to us.
I just hope we don't get there. Like, I hope we stop, or we recognize, like, this is an unnecessarily high risk to be running, and reconsider what we're doing.
I tend to believe that everything that humans can do will be done better by AI other than being human. So the one skill that I ask people to double down on is to learn to be human. The pace of development is so fast. One of the funny theories of artificial intelligence, which I actually think has legs, is that one morning we will wake up and there will be no AI on planet Earth. And simply because overnight they've developed an intelligence so much that they figured out black holes and wormholes and realized that the universe is much, much bigger than this flimsy little planet, and decided, you know what, don't need to be here.